Happy early Halloween, everybody. I am wrapping up October month with Young Frankenstein, directed by Mel Brooks. This is my first time actually seeing Young Frankenstein in its totality. Over the years, I've only seen clips, but I will cut to the chase. I enjoyed this. This was a hilarious film, and outside of the very first uh, Frankenstein film that was created, this one I argue is probably like a proper successor. Well, aside from Bride of Frankenstein, but of course, all of it was the inspiration by the writer Mary Shelley, who created the 1818 novel Frankenstein. And also, a bit of a fact here: if you watch this film, the Frankenstein in this film doesn't have the bolts on the neck because that is trademark by Universal. So they have to work with, without the whole bolts on the neck. But it's like, wow, it's crazy what you can trademark, where you trademark bolts on the neck. But in any case, I'm coming in dressed up as Static Shock. Couldn't afford any new costumes this year. Had so much other stuff to deal with. Hopefully by next year I'll have like a fresher costume. In any case, like this video, leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think of Young Frankenstein. But yeah, like I said, this is directed by Mel Brooks, written by Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder. You might remember him mostly from Blazing Saddles, also directed by Mel Brooks, but also from darn it, just had the word Willy Wonka. Probably like the best Willy Wonka still to this date, and probably the most creepiest of the Willy Wonkas. And a lot of these people, aside from Mel Brooks, have long since passed away. It's like, wow, it's a lot of old Hollywood stars and starlets that has long passed away. Heck, most of them is already like, in the late 30s, 40s plus. So, by the time, at least a few of them, by the time this movie was created back in 1974. Matter of fact, this is like, wow, 4 years prior to the creation of the first Halloween film, which I just did a review on. Like, holy crap, I didn't know it was around the same time. But I do appreciate that this was shot in black and white. I think it needed to be black and white. Couldn't be done any other way. Of course, some of the posters have it in color, but it's just like, yeah, certain things, has to be in black and white, because we do certain things like classic horror monsters in color, aside from maybe Dracula. I don't know, or whatever. I mean, not to say you can't do it in color, but it's just like there's a way to do it. But something like this, yeah, I rather it be in black and white, because it sets the tone of old horror. Anyway, we got Gene Wilder, who plays Dr. Frederick Frankenstein, who's the grandson of Victor Frankenstein. because this is like a successor. It's kind of like a, you know, in the same universe, but it's like a lineage kind of thing. We got Peter Boyle as the monster, Marty Feldman as Igor, or Igor as he pronounced it, who's the grandson of the original Igor, who worked for Victor. Cloris Leachman as Frau Blucher, the housekeeper of the Frankenstein estate. Terry Garr as Inga, Frederick's assistant. Kenneth Mars as Inspector Kemp, the one-eyed inspector with the prosthetic arm, which got a lot of hilarious mileage out of that arm. Madeline Kahn as Elizabeth, Frederick's fiancée. Of course, you got, like a I want to say a cameo, but supporting appearance of Gene Hackman, who plays Harold, a blind man. And Mel Brooks has bit roles, but not like on screen, which we'll get into as to why. He plays like an off-screen werewolf. It was like played for like a bit, because they're all in the same universe kind of situation. And then a voice of the late Victor Frankenstein. So this movie had like a budget of $2.78 million at the time, and it ranked at the box office $86.2 million. So it did very well. I'm pretty sure with inflation, this would have, did at least a half of $1 billion, probably, or at least a little below half of $1 billion, because it's like a well done film. Of course, it's Mel Brooks. Can you believe the guy is like, what is he, 100 right now? I think. Holy crap. The same guy who birthed Max Brooks, who directed his own series of films, mostly very zombie type films, and written books about like zombie guys and what to do, which I've read. I got the audio book on my phone. Wonderful insights. Highly recommend. And his own daughter just recently, it was probably like a year ago, directed her own zombie type film. Didn't do crazy well from what I've heard, but it has a very unique trailer to it. But yeah, that entire Brooks line, it's gonna be, it's like has lineage of directorial and like a directorial lineage here. So it's just like, but like you should hear like Max Brooks retellings of what was like being raised by Mel Brooks, because he kind of squashed the illusion, what people assume what was like living under such a iconic movie star and director who is well known for his hilarity. And it's like, oh my god, you're like, you must have like a ball living with him. And it's like, like it's probably laughing all the time, and all these famous people, blah blah blah. And Max would be upfront and tell you that, and it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. There was like a bit of a story where he mentions how, like, when he was young, not old enough to drive, where his father was like, on a bender or something like that, and he had to underage drive his father home or something like that. You should like check it out, because like, it wasn't all like I said, sunshine and rainbows. Because you know, Mel Brooks grew up in a time where you know movie stars and producers seal a deal on contracts and movie roles, over like snorting cocaine off of strippers' asses type of situations. It was during that era, during like the late '70s into the '80s. So it's like, height of cocaine epidemic kind of situation. Uh, so it was the time. Not saying it was ever cool, but given the era, it was a thing. Uh, Hell, anybody like from Dennis Quaid will tell you that kind of stuff. Like anyone who was like at the peak of rising stars during like the late '70s, getting into the '80s, the Jean-Claude Van Damme, he was had like a bit of a drug addiction. I mentioned it in my Street Fighter review last month, where like he was barely on set, and when he does, he clearly was kind of a bit coked out. So hell, in the early '90s, there was still little remnants of that stuff too. So, like I said, not saying it was ever cool, but things were like kind of okayed a lot of times during that period. It wasn't until probably getting into the 2000s when there was little by little a shift from that kind of crap, even though certain stars even in the 2000s were still getting into stuff on their own, in very little cases where it was kind of enabled. But Hollywood, there's dark sides to Hollywood outside of kind of like the Weinsteins of it all, where just certain stars, got so popular and they end up getting drugged out or get alcohol problems or whatever the case, to keep them going. It tends to be a horror show sometimes. In any case, I also want to point out as like a bit of a fact here that Gene Wilder only agreed to do this film because Mel Brooks had him in mind as to play the role of Frederick Frankenstein. But Gene only agreed to star in it if Mel didn't have any on-screen roles in it at all. The only reason being because, as stated, Mel had a propensity to break the fourth wall in his films, or at the very least doing like kind of wink at the audience, which Gene did not want in this film. So through intense discussions, eventually Mel caved and decides like, okay, even though he was in it, he was off screen or doing some vocal thing, so there's no fourth wall breaks at all, because he tended to be right. If you look at every other Mel Brooks film, anytime he is on screen, there's always some type of fourth wall break in those films. If not by him, he tends to add it. And Gene Wilder, I guess, maybe wasn't like a fan of it personally, of fourth wall breaks. Anyway, the movie starts with Frederick going by Frankenstein, teaching some medical students, or doing like a lecture on of how the body moves, where the no matter like just like by reaction I forgot the medical terms, but I'm pretty sure that if there's medical people watching this, they can go over how I'm describing this. Where he's showing the students how, you know, voluntary and involuntary muscle movements are, where you can show like a, you know, this patient, and he does like a, pretends like he's about to kick him in the stomach, and you know he naturally reacts. But if you shut off certain, like, you know, impulses where like the body naturally, you know, would react to avoid certain dangers or punishments, uh, uh, you know, showing how that, you know, the movements going on. One student who, I don't know what this kid's deal was, and notice there was one black guy in the crowd of students. It's kind of like, oh wow, showing that, you know, sure, there's like, I guess you can say there's like tokenism or whatever. I doubt it, but it was the 70s. Who knows? But it's like, you know, to say there wasn't no. I like to make sure I point out when I see it as I go back on certain older films. I like to make sure I point out when I can. It's like, no, like I did with the early Harry Potter films. Like, no, there was some like people of color here. You just like, you know, I don't know, uh, uh, crap. What do you call that term? Um, Mandela effect. Maybe it's some type of Mandela effect people are having, but uh, you know, if you look back on certain older films, you tend to see people of color in supporting roles or extras or something of the kind in there, so that like, yeah, there were people there. Now you might can argue there were cases of tokenism, but sometimes there wasn't. But irregardless, they was there. Anyway, this kid sitting there, you know, keep calling him Frankenstein when clearly he like, you've been in this class before, or you know who's going to be lecturing you for the day. Why are you constantly hampering on his, sure, it's his birth name, but clearly this guy is going by Frankenstein for a reason, and you purposely, 2 times already, keep calling him Frankenstein when he's like, you know, clearly doesn't want to be called that. He purposely goes by Frankenstein. If you clearly, you know, reading the itinerary for the day and how who's a lecturer, how it's spelled, you should respect it. But he keeps bringing up about his grandfather's work of reanimating the dead, and he expressed how, like, no, that is hogwash, and clearly he has, like, this is a trigger for him because his family's name was tarnished because of, yeah, his grandfather was playing God. It was a horrific act that, you know, if it's following the lore, the monster that he reanimated caused some deaths, and it just kind of like, you know, causes horrible reputation on the family lineage. So of course he would try his might to distance himself from all that stuff. Speaking of which, it kind of reminds me of the whole Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, where it's called Dr. Jekyll and Mrs. Hyde. It's pretty much kind of like the same thing as this film, where it's kind of like a lineage, where like a descendant redoing the originator's old works in like a more modern setting. Hold on, because I want to put this on the list. Put that on the list for next year, because I haven't seen that in a while. One second. Anyway, so uh, after the lecture, uh, uh, the doctor gets a letter uh, from the lawyer about him inheriting the Frankenstein estate in Transylvania. So he says his goodbyes to his fiancee. Like I said, it's hilarious. Where this woman just don't want to. It's like, oh, like doesn't want to be tested certain areas. Like, oh no, the nails. Oh no, this is this mascara. Like, no, this is Cartier. It's like barely you just be able to. It's like the whole entire thing is just so freaking funny. He's just barely touching this woman. Is supposed to be his fiance. So he takes he travels to Transylvania where he meets up with Igor, and of course this actor who's playing Igor, Marty Feldman, who was a comedian and a British comedian, actor, and writer who was known for his kind of prominent and misaligned eyes, which got him the role of this, which Mel Brooks kind of brilliantly leaned on to make Igor to part of them, like the most like at least not recognizable, but just like it's like, oh, like he will be remembered kind of thing. It's like anytime you think of Igor, you're thinking about this guy's face as like how Igor needs to look. And the actor didn't let that what he was born with hold him back, and he accomplished to be like a great writer and comedian and actor, and which kind of goes to show that you don't need this whole like a whole movement or this whole thingamajig by super progressive Hollywood is like to fight for you. No, you just like you push, you work hard, and like and it'll take time, but eventually if you push through, you will like get into certain spaces and reach your goals. Well, some type of like whole movement needs to be pushed to like fight for this, or and like the make space for people with elongated eyes or something like that. It's kind of reminds me of Danny DeVito. It's not like he's not deformed or got anything going on. He just got like a kind of like a short stature and a particular look to him. It's not like a crazy look to him. He's still like a normal dude. He just got like a particular stature. But he did not let that hold him back, and he was cast in a prominent TV show, Taxi, and then which catapulted him eventually to roles like the Penguin, which in my personal opinion, he is like the perfect Penguin of all time in Batman history. But he also like was great in Matilda, and of course with like Always Sunny, that TV show. And of course Twins with like Arnold Schwarzenegger. This guy is like an acting dynamo. Like I said, you don't even do all these crazy movements. You just it's just like hard work. And of course and merit. And we tend to forget that. So RP to this actor, and kudos to him for like making it so far in this like uh 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 and got like crazy roles as he did. Oh wow, it was like oh, he wasn't born with it. It looks like, wait a minute. It's like he had a thyroid disease, uh, causing his eyes to protrude. He died of a heart attack, but it also didn't help the fact that he's like a heavy cigarette smoker at the time. He died in Mexico City. 48. Wow. Anyway, get off topic here. But anyway, he messed up with Igor, who honestly, God, it's hard to tell like who's like the funniest out of this entire film because, well, if I got to choose who was the least funniest, it has to be the monster. Not that it wasn't any funny moments with him, but he is at the bottom tier in my personal opinion. But man, there's some laughs out of Igor, man. Him and Frederick, those those two playing off each other was so good. Oh my god, it's like I was busting up laughing. Just like the straight man and the goofball. It's like golly. Uh, but he goes to the castle and meets with the he meets up with the assistant and the uh housekeeper. Oh, and by the way, another funny moment where, like, every once in a while, Frederick notices that the hump on Igor's back constantly moves from one side to the other on random moments. Like, it's like, your hump. What about it? Wasn't it? Never mind. It's just like, oh, golly. It's just like, it's so dumb. Uh, but, uh, the the housekeeper Frau. Oh my god, she was like a she was a character. It's like constantly like clearly had like a thing with his grandfather, and she was like, would you like anything? No, thank you. Water? No. Tea? No. Ovaltine? No. It's like, did they have Ovaltine way back in the 70s? It's like, to make that reference, I thought Ovaltine was like at the earliest an 80s thing. I gotta look this up. When was Ovaltine created? Don't know why my computer's running slow right now. Holy crap, 1904? I did not know that. Oh, Ovaltine was created in 1904 by chemist Albert Wander, who lived from 1867 to 1950, in Bern, Switzerland, where it was also known by its original name, Ovomaltine. Ovum Latin for egg and malt, which were originally its key ingredients. Oh wow, that is a fun fact. Oh goodness. Yeah, a little fun fact for you guys. You can say like Ovaltine was created back in 1904 by a Swiss chemist. Uh, Ovum, and his original name was Ovomaltine. Ovomaltine. Ovum being Latin for egg and malt. Crazy fun fact. Anyway, so and this part it was kind of weird because I never understood where this was coming from, but he started late at night. Frederick's starting to get like nightmares or something like that, or he's plagued by voices from his grandfather or something. Don't know what sparked this on. Maybe you can say maybe the castle was haunted, but I don't know. There was no lead up to that, so this kind of feels like kind of out of the blue, at least to me. But he was awakened by his assistant, who, after discovering a hilarious bookshelf, situation, a secret passageway to a hidden library, with all of his grandfather's journals about reviving his monster. And that's where now, for because of these books, is I guess what he thought was hogwash turns out to have some legitimate principles that he wanted to with the technology he had, at least for that moment, because science would have probably advanced a little bit further from his grandfather's time to his grandson's time. So he tries to recreate. He wants to recreate and try to get right where his grandfather failed. So they end up getting a recently executed criminal's corpse, and he instructed Igor to go grab a brain of this well-known scientist who was a saint, to have that brain inside the body when it's reanimated. But Igor accidentally drops the jar, crushes the brain completely. So he decides to just grab any random brain, and he grabs the one that says abnormal. And this leads to another hilarious moment, because when after this, the townspeople who gets word that the grandson of Victor Frankenstein is taking a residence in the castle, they know because they make references to like several references to like the past Frankenstein films. They are worried that he will repeat the same thing his grandfather did, and their town will be terrorized by an undead creature. So the inspector, with a heavy, hilarious German accent, goes to check up on Frederick. And of course, he manages to go through the process, but thought it was a complete failure. But it turns out it actually worked. But the creature, isn't smart. at all like he anticipated he should be. He speaks in grunts, and is has to be he's spooked by fire as per usual with the Frankenstein monster, and starts attacking Frederick, and he's choking so much he can't speak, and he has to do like charades to tell him like give him a sedative, and I go like set a give, and of course like Inga is like, oh, a sedative. She gives the monster a sedative to knock him out. It's like, a sedative. It kind of reminds me, speaking of Gene Hackman, it kind of reminds me of Lex Luthor and Otis. And it's like, Otisburg. It's just like the ignorance of that word is just like setting him off. But then he composes himself and sits down and it's like, Igor, please sit, and it's he asks like just calmly and plainly, did you get the brain that I asked for? It's like, no. What brain did you give me? You promise you won't get mad? I promise you I will not get mad. I give him the brain of abnormal. Abnormal? He thought it was like, whoa, the words wasn't even separated, but you thought his first name was Ab and his last name was Normal. Oh my god. And he starts to proceed to like strangle the life out of him before the inspector kind of shows up. And he assures the inspector like, no, I am not doing any of the sort. I don't believe in that mess. Blah blah blah. Completely lies to his face. But then the housekeeper Fawn plays like violin, knowing because she was around at the time of his grandfather reviving the first monster, and knowing the music soothed the savage beast kind of thing. And I love when she's like answer every question that he has when he discovers that she released this guy who was supposed to be strapped down. I was like, yes. Like, this woman's a character. And it's like, I doubt this is his grandmother, but clearly just like a woman the grandfather was boinking at that time. Kind of like Frederick, who had like a whole fiance, but boinking his assistant. So it's not too dissimilar. But the creature ended up escaping, bumps into a young girl and then this blind man. But eventually they recaptured the creature, and Frederick locks himself in a room to calm the beast, to get some understanding, cooperation, and treat him kind of like a son in a way, not too dissimilar to the movie. Which, by the way, they just recently did, like, Guillermo del Toro just recently did a Frankenstein movie starring Oscar Isaacs. So it's like perfect timing in terms of Frankenstein films. From what I'm hearing, the film is doing pretty well. Haven't seen it, but I'm probably eventually will check it out when it becomes available to watch. Which, like, Victor tends to treat, because it's like an abomination to life in a sense, but Victor sees will always see like his creation as like his child, in a way. So Frederick, not too dissimilar, saying that he created life just artificially. This is very Frankenstein's monster deal here. This is like, not a normal way of creating life. So of course it always will look grotesque in some kind of way. In a way, now I'm thinking about it, it's kind of like with like AI robots, where people's kind of playing like God, like real life Dr. Jekyll, not Dr. Jekyll, I'm sorry, real life Dr. Frankenstein's out here creating AI robots. This is kind of, except with corpses, is actually with machines, but it's very similar in a way. So it's like Mary Shelley's, brought to life in a way. Anyway, so after he, gasses up, this monster's head, it was like, oh, you're beautiful, and like nothing wrong with you, you're perfect, blah blah blah, and he at this moment embraces his Frankenstein lineage. Then he starts, making this part. Mel Brooks was early on against this particular scene where Gene was all for it and Gene somehow got his way on this part, which personally I don't. I know it's kind of an iconic scene, but watching it play out in full context, because by itself it's funny, but watching it in full context, I personally would not have gone the route of doing a whole putting on the Ritz, trying to showcase, how civilized this creature that he reanimated is to the public. And I don't know, you could have gone, I guess it wouldn't have been as funny, but Delaware, thanks for the follow, man. I wouldn't personally have gone that route. It's just like, but I guess it's as to the hilarity, where it's like you got Frederick and the monster doing like a musical number of putting on the Ritz, and he's just like putting on the Ritz, and I don't know. Personally, I would have gone something else. This, it's funny. My favorite film of all time, Spider-Man No Way Home is my personal favorite film of all time. But because one of the light bulbs on the stage bursts, it kind of frightens the monster, freaks everybody out. Monster gets freaked out, so the police captures the creature and put it in some kind of solitary confinement, which of course he eventually breaks out. And right around that time, his fiance shows up after he just finished boinking his assistant. Frederick eventually tracks down the creature after the creature bangs his fiance, which, how dumb is this girl who can't tell this creature is dead? Because he's still, like, I know it's in black and white, but clearly he has like a corpse green hue to his skin. And of course, early on they kind of notated that the body is very well endowed in terms of his size of his penis. And of course, that has to come around again. But it's like, again, the body is reanimated, but still, his inner workings, shouldn't allow for, let's say, discharge of his member. So, whatever. You don't need to think too hard on that, I guess. But people, the townspeople decides to form a mob being led by the inspector to come and kill this creature. But in order to try to get this creature to be truly civilized, Frederick ends up transferring a bit of his intelligence into the creature in order to have it be able to speak coherently. And you get Peter Boyle, who is an amazing actor, speak eloquently to the townspeople and convinces them that he is like a civilized person. Favorite anime? It's kind of like a tie between Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon. So the townspeople just, I know they probably just wrapping this up and trying to wrap it up in a nice neat bow, but it's kind of like quick where the townspeople just do a complete 180 and it's like, oh wow, he's cool now because he can talk fluently. That part I did not, and I said I don't care for, but I think that was like a too easy of a fix. And like I said, it kind of feels like they're trying to wrap this up kind of quickly, like they run out of runtime here. So, and then Frederick ends up going with Inga, while the fiance, now all dolled up like the bride of Frankenstein for no apparent reason, ends up hooking up with the monster. And the movie ends with Frederick, because of the transference, has a little bit of the monster in him, where he kind of, every once in a while speaks in kind of like grunts. And that was Young Frankenstein. I still thoroughly enjoyed it. I just think they kind of rusted at the end, with certain things that seems trying to wrap it up in a nice, neat bow that didn't have a proper lead up to it. But I still enjoyed it. There's so many funny moments, and I think, while I agree with Gene Wilder on keeping Mel Brooks out of it in terms of on-screen appearance, so that way they can avoid any unnecessary fourth wall breaks, because I don't think this movie needs it. But what I would agree with Mel Brooks on is the fact that they probably should have took out the whole putting on the red show number, because I didn't think it needed it. So that's just my personal opinion. My books, what are you talking about? Anyway, that's just my thoughts. That's my review on Young Frankenstein. Still a high recommend, because this is like crazy funny. And Gene Wilder is just like, Gene Wilder and Martin Feldman are the highlights for me, especially when they play off each other. It's so funny. But in any case, if you're watching this on YouTube, please give a like, share this with your friends. Let me know in the comments below what you think of Young Frankenstein. Oh yes, I am Arthur. I'm just like, oh wow, yeah, I got at least a couple of books, but yeah, good reference, man. I'm like, I know you checked out the book, yeah. But anyway, I'm about to wrap up now. But I will see you guys a little bit later as I get back to playing some more Borderlands 4 and Digimon Time Stranger. And maybe I'll have some time to squeeze in. Well, maybe not. I was about to say maybe I have some time to squeeze in more Marvel Rivals. But might just stick to Borderlands 4 and Digimon. But in any case, don't know if I'll stream on Halloween, but if you follow me on Twitter or Twitch, you'll know if I'm going live or not. But I want to make sure I get out my last bit of reviews before October ends. So look forward to some family, food related, or Native American related movie reviews for the month of November. And then, of course, in the course of December, there's going to be very holiday, Christmas related content as well. But I will see you guys a little bit later. Take care. Thanks for checking out the stream, and I will see you all soon. Peace. And happy Halloween.